Hello people! So I have promised some time ago that I would do some VOD reviews where I basically take a look at people and how they fight, either in sparring or in tournament, and give my feedback, my thoughts on how to do certain things, as well as the explanations of the logic behind why do certain things the way we do them, or the way we try to do them, so why certain things are correct. So the first video I have chosen is by Snowboarder 3195, and this is footage from IGX 2018. So let's take a look. I have chosen, out of these 15 minutes, I have chosen 2 fights, and this might come off as very rough, however, it is meant to basically just give, especially the person who is fighting, but also all the people who are watching, to give a baseline of the logic behind certain movements. So I will be mostly focusing on mechanics and not so much on strategy. So let's go. Okay, so first thing that I have noticed here, and that actually a lot of fencers do, which can be pretty bad if you are not aware that you are doing it, is keeping the point pretty far out from your center line. Why that is actually a problem is because it gives the opponent a little bit more time to actually hit you. You are more open here than you were if the sword was in something like this position. Also, if you have a sword in a slightly higher position, so the point is more up, your hand will be here, which gives you more space to actually properly do a strike. So while this kind of position isn't catastrophic, it is much better to actually have the point upwards, unless you are doing it for a specific reason. And we'll get back to that because Fabian has a similar position of the sword, a little bit more forward, that he uses to great effect, and we'll take a look at that a little bit later. Okay, so also we can see that here the defense, let me just pause at the right time. This wasn't really a defense, so I guess you could argue that he just wanted to give off a threat, but he doesn't follow up on it. Even when you know you're not gonna be hit, you still want to get into the habit of having a good defense. So we take a look, this is his sword, and that means that pretty much this part is open to a strike. This wouldn't have defended if the strike had actually been a little bit longer. However, the distance management was the main defense here, so this is just nitpicking. Okay, Geisler, don't turn your back after you've given a hit. It's just a bad habit to get into. Always be ready to block a counterattack or whatever. Even if there is a rule set with something like the right of way, you still want to get into the habit of defending. Blue fencer, ready? Red fencer, ready? Judge. Fight! Okay, so this is a stance that doesn't make any sort of sense. They are within distance, so if somebody attacks with a full step, they can hit each other. But this point over here is not primed to attack in any way because the hands are very close by, close to the body. It doesn't have any threat, it doesn't have any tension that would actually threaten an attack here. And it's also a very bad defensive position. So this is not a position that you would want to be in. And keep in mind, this is dangerous now because the opponent is already in striking distance. Okay, so we have here what looks like it probably... Yeah, let's say it's a simultaneous attack. and the attack was started from this position over here. There are several things that could be done better here. First off is the hands are very, very low, which means that if you want to attack, your hands will probably have to come up a little bit. You'll have to fight gravity. Your body mechanics won't be as strong because basically if you strike slightly downwards, it is stronger than if you strike slightly upwards. The other thing is the point started off here, which is again tied to the position of the hands and everything. So the attack isn't as fast as it could be. It doesn't cover well enough like it should. However, our fencer, our snowboarder, does actually go in for... I know that was a hit, lifts his hands up, which in this case is fine. Oh! And wisely goes for an attack from the same side, so that was okay. Alright, let's talk about this a little bit. Again, here there are quite a few things that we can talk about. First is this position doesn't give you any sort of advantage against your opponent. This position this is basically Meyer's Zornhut, right? So, several things here. First off, the butt is way out of the center of gravity. You always want to have your butt in your center of gravity to help with movement. That's the first thing. The second thing is the snowboarder is facing at a diagonal, so this would be his center line is facing somewhere along that line, instead of facing the opponent from a side like you should do. So where his center line should be is facing over there, his feet should be about here, so this foot should be about here and this foot should be about here, so that he is sideways. That gives a much bigger threat. But again, they are out of distance here, so let's say this can be seen as taunting the enemy. So it doesn't really make sense to do this out of distance too much unless you want the opponent to come into you. But if you want them to come into you, you want to be with your side to the opponent. So we can see the same thing here. You can see that the position looks slightly awkward, and that's mostly because the hips are too far out. You want to have the hips underneath you. Okay. Again, we have hands relatively low. This is a little bit low, but fine. And the point to the a little bit too far to the outside. Okay, keeping the distance, that's good. I am very sensitive about this, so most of the videos I will review, I expect I will have to say this. But keep your front knee facing either forward or outwards. That's because simply it's dangerous. It's an injury that you will get an injury by doing this all the time. Okay, so don't do it. Train yourself to actually have your knee facing forward. I know it's very difficult, and my front knee still tends to buckle inwards sometimes as well, after like a dozen years of doing HEMA, but keep it in mind and always, always, always try to have the knee facing either slightly outwards or forward. Now, I really am talking about the knee here, because some people think that if you just rotate your foot so that it looks outward, it's okay, but that means that you have to bend your knee less for the tension on the tendons to start happening. So be careful here. You want to keep your form good. Okay, very wide stance here. No reason why you couldn't move this foot back a little bit to keep your stance nice and neutral. Okay, that was a decent run through. However, the start was very, very telegraphed. Very telegraphed, and you did not cover yourself. So your sword is here, and all of this then is open. You were lucky that you were fast enough for the opponent not to react in time. And basically managed to do a very, very nice taking the back.
In exchange, both fighters get 1 additional victory point. Match red.
Okay, so that was the first thing. Now let's move on to the last fight. Let me just see where it starts. A little bit further back. Is it... Oh, this is white pants, we need brown pants. Okay, I think this is it. Let's see. See, this is a relatively nice stance that you are standing in here. So it's nice because even though it's a very wide stance, you are keeping your back foot and your torso kind of in line, so like this. That's a good thing. If you have a wide stance, this is what you want to do. Your knee is slightly towards the inside, so I'd keep it a little bit more out, but this is generally the stance that you want to have when you have a wide stance. So somebody that really uses this well is Fabian, and I can actually show it because I have him already. OBS, there we go. So Fabian, here we go. This is basically the stance that we are looking at, only done at a higher level. Pretty much straight from the heel to his head, and very explosive, very aggressive stance that you can still move backwards in. So if I just give you, this is by the way from the HEMA channel. If you don't know the guy, do definitely check them out. He has some pretty good analysis, very good analysis actually, of competitive longsword bouts. So here we go, he moves back, he has time to defend, and he has time to reacquire his target and attack again. So very good stance when done correctly. You want to keep in mind that you have to do it correctly. That was a tap to the arm. You were offering the arm pretty far out. So whenever you do that, you have to be aware that it's very easy for the opponent to basically hit the arm here.
Oh!
That was a decent response. We have a very nice ballerina pose here. Decent response, though a bit late, and it doesn't actually get counted because it was too late, of course.
I did see something, but it was several actions after.
Now this is not the type of stance you want to have when you're wide. So we have a very wide stance. We have the knee going inwards. I can't really see if it's buckled in or if it's relatively straight. And the butt is going out of your center of balance. Your butt should be here, not here. So be mindful of that. However, your from tack position here is much better. What you want to do, how you can improve the stance, is bring this foot a little bit closer in and bring your hips underneath your center of balance. Okay, so you almost went to the more proper stance for this kind of thing, but then went back to the very wide stance, with the knee actually bent inwards. Now here is the thing with tippy taps. I'm not calling the strike tippy tap, by the way. I'm calling... Just a second, let's take a look. This is tippy tap. Whenever you do an action like this, it has to be with the intention of making your opponent do something. So if you just kind of annoy them with this, the action is meaningless. And usually you have to give some sort of a threat. Now, you are in such a wide stance here, with your butt being slightly out of your center of balance, that the opponent knows that you can't make a full step and threaten him with a stab. So he reacts very, very minimally here. If you had a stance that was narrower, you could have threatened with a stab much more easily. Or even if you were in a position with the leg being straighter, it would also be much more threatening than it is right now. We'll talk about the attack from one side with making the step from the other a little bit later, I believe. Okay, and another thing that this person, so Snowboarder, does this quite a lot, and it's not as obvious in these two fights, however it is quite prevalent in the others, is having the same foot forward on the side of the hands. That is bad because it locks up our hips and we can't use them to make a good strong attack or help with anchoring our defense basically. So you don't want to do that. You want to have your hands on the side where the hips are free. That was a good attack.
Escaped, where I had one where I was slowly pushed out and as I railed him, but it counted as
Last exchange.
Okay, so you switch the stance, that's good. You kind of corrected the wide stance being more where it should be. Not completely though. But this is better, and your hands are on the right side, so this is good. The knee is going inwards again a little bit. Okay. Again, wide stance without actually being aggressive enough to be threatening. So you either want to do this, or you want to bring the foot a little bit closer. And again, you changed feet so that you had the front foot on the side where your hands were. That will come back to bite you if you get used to it. Also, because you had the other foot forward, so this is a much better stance now. This is a better stance than, let me see when you switch, than this is. This is not a good stance for you. Now, because you switched feet, you cannot make a very good lengthy step forward, and you had to switch your feet to actually make a good, to make a passing step here. So you are attacking from the left side, but you are stepping with the right foot, which means your hips are going, where is it? There we go. Your hips are going that way, and your strike is going this way, which makes no kind of sense. And of course, it kind of unbalances you. That's why there was this kind of a weird movement. That's why the gloss actually tells us step with the foot from where the strike is coming. So if you are doing a left strike, step with the left foot. There are cases where you can ignore this, but it is a very good baseline and a very important rule of thumb to understand and to learn. Once you understand how and when it works, then you can start breaking it. So again, we have the slightly awkward from tag with low hands and the point slightly outwards. Okay, there we go. That's better. Okay, you got hit by a Geisler. I don't mind this. This is actually good because you let go with the right hand, which kind of unlocks your upper torso to act as a buffer, because your hips still move this way, but because your torso is now free and unburdened from the right hand, you can actually stab, which is fine. This is called a flesh in modern fencing, and it's a completely valid technique. It was a good response to being hit, I think. Of course, it's always better not to be hit at all.
It landed with several steps after, so I can't give it to you, unfortunately, by definition. So that is 1 point from blue. That is
Ready?
Okay. Oh, and then this is the last fight that I will actually review. So I think I said I was gonna do 2. I'm actually gonna do 3 fights to review here. So this person in the brown pants with the forest green jacket, is that forest green or is it with a bright green jacket? He moves differently than our snowboarder is, and I'll just let you see for a little bit. So you can see he's a more experienced fencer, simply because he keeps his balance, his center of balance, and his ass in approximately the same position. So, center of balance, and this is his ass, believe it or not. So they're in line. He doesn't actually let his hips move backwards. Whoop, whoop, no, okay, good.
Hold! Point, no exchange from the fairly strong to the strong scoring action. Nothing from Blue's corner, so no exchange.
Again, we have the very awkward stance with the hands on the left side and the left foot being forward. If you want to stand like this, have your left foot forward or go into the right fluke. Also, be mindful of having your default parry be the high parry, because when you go into a high parry, it means that you open yourself up here, and you open yourself up quite a lot. So it's very easy for someone to go right ober, then right unterhau, or low zwerghau to your left side of the ribs, and basically exploit that you are getting used to lifting your hands up as a default defense. Again, hands and feet, and keeping your point non-threatening, but still out of your center. So if you're gonna keep it out of center, keep it threatening. Don't just keep it there, keep it a little bit forward, threaten with a stab. Again, the high defense. You have very large movements when you do, and by large movements I mean in the hands. It's fine to have large movements in the point, that is more than acceptable. However, you want to have large movement with a point and as small movements as possible with the hands while still keeping form. Again, we have same foot and same side hand, and the point being face towards out. Okay, that was a good little run through. Very aggressive.
I've watched 2 passes around, so solid second pass.
And again, you really like this stance, and I'm not sure why, because it locks you up. This locks you up by quite a bit. So change it to either right fluke or the other foot forward. Okay, I think he got hit into the hand here, so let's take a look. Yep, definitely got hit. And here's the thing with the upper defense. So let me move back just an inch here. Okay. So your hands are now here. The opponent's attack is coming from this side. So that was very, very ugly, but okay, it's coming like this. Now, you have two options to defend. You can basically just pull your hands downwards, keeping your point somewhere around, let's say here, or it can be even closer to you. Or you can try the hanging guard, which has a much longer travel distance, and you have to be fast enough to actually put your point below the opponent's and defend them that way. So in most cases, defending into the standard defense with your hands at your hips is better. So you opt to go in for the Hengen defense here, and you did get hit. However, you did manage to get your point below, so that's okay. Also, what happens if you defended this so that your hands were instead so like this, you have a very, very nice target to stab. So a very short distance to actually go to stab the opponent. That was, again, hands high up, whereas if they were here, you would have defended that strike as well. Not that it really matters, because the first strike landed. There was a very nice exchange that followed, but keep in mind that in most cases, the Hengen parry is slower than the standard parry. Whoop, like this.
1 point from red. No.
All right.
Okay, last exchange.
And we have the last exchange. You do not want to move in distance in Halbschwert. That is very dangerous. You want to close the distance, then go into Halbschwert. So it's good that you actually backed off and went with the standard grip. Oh! That was well done. That was a nice little exchange. Let's take a look at it again. Okay. This happens to a lot of us as well. We tend to move our hands up as soon as we're attacked. That's not the best idea, because if we have our hands relatively low, so if we have our hands here close to the body and relatively low, we can cover all of this. However, as soon as we start moving them up, everything below them is suddenly open. So a great target for Unterhauen or sometimes Mittelhau or Loodzwergs or whatever. That was a decent defense. Good Hengenlock. That was a good strike to the hands. However, this was actually well executed because you went into kind of a 3-point step. So you turned your hips by turning your knee and foot this way and lifting the heel up here, so it isn't as bad as it would be otherwise, but you still stepped with the wrong foot for the strike. But remember when I said that sometimes you can actually break the rules when you know how they work, and the 3-point step is one of those workarounds against this rule that can sometimes be applied.
Oh!
And the Händebrücken to finish it off.
Okay, so from red there's a strike to the hands prior to the ring out, so 1 point from blue.
I'm not sure what the judge just said. However, did red actually get hit in the hands? Did our snowboarder get hit in the hands? Because I didn't see that. There was a sound here, but I'm not sure if this was just a defense or if that connected, because if it connected, then green should get a point.
Oh!
Alright. So just to wrap it up, my advice to Snowboarder would be several-fold. First off, don't have the same foot forward. Don't have the foot forward where you have your hands. So if your hands are on the left side, keep your right foot forward and vice versa. Second, if you're in a wide stance, keep the line from the heel to the head straight. So be very aggressive. Otherwise, close the stance a little bit. Have a narrower stance. It's going to help you. Third thing is be mindful of having the default defense be the hanging guard, because it opens you up. Try having your default defense being just having your hands close to your body with a point facing slightly upwards, and when you see an advantage in using a hanging guard, only then actually use it. And there was one more thing that I wanted to say. Oh yeah, and your hand movements when you do strikes are very, very large. They do not need to be that large. So try to keep them tighter. However, you have very good, very circular and big point movements. So try to keep that, but make your arm and hand movements a little bit tighter, a little bit smaller. So that's it. I hope you people found this useful. If you disagree with me in any aspect of what I just said, feel free to start a debate down in the comments. That is actually one of the points to see how people think about HEMA as such and the mechanics that are behind it. So thanks for watching, and until next time, have a good one.